If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
But they now head over to Florida to see if they can get themselves right. So as MSG prepares to host the East Regionals for the men's NCAA tournament, Knicks are in Florida for a 2-game road trip. They'll start things off with a big game against the Miami Heat on Wednesday night. The Heat rallied in the fourth quarter to beat Detroit on Sunday. The Knicks won the last 2 meetings between the Miami Heat, which were very important. Randall hit a dramatic game winner in Miami to beat the Heat on March 3rd, 122-120. Miami is 3 games behind the Knicks in the standings. They are currently in that dreaded 7th spot. That is the first spot in the play-in tournament. Knicks will then travel to Orlando to face the Orlando Magic on Thursday night. The Knicks also won their first 2 meetings with the Magic this season. Knicks won a tough road game on February 2nd, 102-98. So starting with this Heat game, Tommy, how did the Knicks bounce back against a Miami Heat team that will be desperate to try to get this one?
Yeah, first and foremost, let's note the importance. Again, Knicks haven't clinched anything yet this season. Yes, they're in a comfortable position. They're 2 games ahead of the Nets, who are the 6th seed, Knicks as the 5 seed. Nets are playing the Cavs Tuesday and Thursday. Difficult matchup, obviously. Cavs will be favored both of those games. Cavs can do the Knicks a favor. It's kind of like, as I mentioned previously, it was kind of a win-win. But I think at this stage of the game, I don't be interested to, let me ask you, who are you rooting for in that game, Cleveland and Brooklyn?
I think at this point, you gotta try to stay in 5. So I think you gotta just say, because the thing about Cleveland is, one, you have a game with Cleveland, so you can kind of you can win a game in game 1, but you can't drop to 6. Not that like I said, I'm not as afraid of Boston or Philly as maybe most Knicks fans are, but I'm not wishing to see those teams. I'd prefer to play Cleveland out of all those 4 top teams. Agreed. So you got to get that 5 spot at least. So you got to see Cleveland try to win these games.
The only thing I'd say for the 6th seed, and I thought about this kind of randomly the other day, if you want to get crazy and you want to get funky and you want to think, all right, if they win that first round, then maybe they can in the second round, avoid the Bucks, because I think the Bucks, I think we'd all agree, have kind of established themselves as the team. So if you if you stay in that 4-5 slot and you beat the Cavs in the first round, incredible accomplishment. Playing the Bucks is not fun. But that being said, totally agree with you. That prioritizing the 5 seed is probably the idea right now. So I think Knicks fans should probably root for the Cavs there. But again, from the Knicks perspective, again, nothing's clinched, not even the 6 seed. So they are they enter tonight 3 games ahead of the Heat, and they won the first 2 games against Miami. So if they win tonight, they clinch the tiebreaker. They'll be up 4 games on Miami with 8 games left in the schedule. I don't want to say that's an insurmountable lead. Anything can happen, but that's a very comfortable cushion to work with. It also, I think, importantly, it would enable the coaching staff to kind of limit Brunson's minutes coming down the stretch. Maybe limit Randall, give him a few extra minutes of rest tonight. Give Obi and Toppin a couple more minutes. Maybe get McBride, get him some rest in favor of Brunson. The final 5 or 6 games of the season. If you lose this, then it's only 2 games. Then the lead over Miami is down to 2 games. Then the Knicks play the Heat again next Wednesday. Then you start. Anything can happen. Then you start worrying. Then there's a reason for Knicks fans to be a little nervous. So the Knicks haven't played an really, really important game. It seems like they've kind of been playing with house money for a while. Games against the Nuggets, etc. This is an important contest coming off that loss against Minnesota, going down to Miami. The Heat have been struggling, but we know what Jimmy Butler can do in an important game. As you mentioned, same way the Timberwolves were in desperation mode, same thing for the Heat. They know that the Nets are playing the Cavs at the same time, and not only catching the Knicks is the goal, obviously, but they're only a game game behind Brooklyn. So if they can win this game and the Nets lose, then they're tied for that 6th seed. So a lot on the line, a lot at stake. Will be very interesting to see how both teams approach this contest.
Yeah, and you mentioned the desperation level for the Heat and how the T-Wolves had that same desperation. After the game, I watched Torian Prince in the post game for Bally Sports, their T-Wolves channel. I guess it was South North or whatever it is. But he said essentially that this is a desperate game. We lost 2 in a row. We're in a crazy playoff race, and our goal was to just go out there and play as hard as possible and do things that the other team is not willing to do.
And we found out this morning. I'm sure the team knew, but the collective, we found out this morning that I think it was Shams that reported that Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards are, I don't know, probable. I'm not sure the wording you used, but it sounds like they both have a chance to return Wednesday. So I'm sure the Wolves are thinking, listen, let's just go all out Monday, get this win, and then we get the reinforcements coming Wednesday night.
Yeah, like these teams that are fighting for their lives, that they know that at this point in the season, there are some teams that are just not going to be able to go to the lengths that they're willing to go to get a win. And the T-Wolves and Torian Prince essentially saying that he felt like the Knicks, that they just outworked them and they were just going to play a lot harder than them. And that's what they did. It was very clear in this game. So this is the mindset that these teams have that are in the play-in tournament. So any team that you're playing in the play-in tournament right now that's in that situation, like you need to be playing 100% focused and are really on your game, because these teams are playing with a serious sense of desperation, especially these teams that are like veteran teams that aren't tanking. You know, some of these teams, like the Oklahoma City Thunder, like I know they want to make the play in, but like if they don't miss it and they get in the lottery, I don't think they'll be, panicked. I don't think the Jazz will be panicked. The Jazz I don't know if you've seen the Jazz. They were, Chris Dunn was playing yesterday and they won against the Kings. So some of these teams I think are kind of trying to get themselves out of the play-in, but the Heat is not one of those teams. The T-Wolves not one of those teams. So when you face these teams, like you have to play. You have to be on your P's and Q's. So the Knicks, they're going to have to come out focused. And what I would expect, which is going to be interesting, is the last time these two teams played, Miami blitzed Brunson on screens, which I thought was what you'll see in the playoffs. But then Randall went crazy. So what I wonder is, how do they adjust their team this time around? They play a lot of zone, so I expect they'll play a lot of zone again against the Knicks. But Randall went crazy against the Rams, coming out with a 57 burger. Like, I wonder how the Heat change their defensive strategy. Do they decide to run even more doubles at Randall? Do they maybe let Brunson play a little more one-on-one? How does that work? Do they just play almost exclusively zone, which I've seen a couple teams do against the Knicks this season? What do you think about the adjustments the Heat may make coming into this game, considering they played 2 very interesting games against the Knicks? They were different games. If he went off, Brunson didn't play. Second game, Brunson played. They tried to take him away, and then Brandon went for 44.
Yeah, and Randall obviously hit the game winner in Miami that Friday night, the last time they played, and he's coming off a career high 57. It'll be interesting. I wonder if they'll, we've seen Bam, cover him on occasion.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they run doubles at him and take the ball out of his hands. I would think they'd be hesitant to do that because then you allow Brunson to carve you up on the interior in the paint, either getting his own shot or assisting others. Brunson 10 assists last night. So I think that'll be an important factor on the Knicks end. I think controlling Jimmy Butler is the key. Because we saw him, do damage, get to the free throw line 18 times, and we talked about Grimes. This is an opportunity for him to step up. He's one of those guys when in the playoffs, you're gonna have to stop that other team's best scorer, typically a perimeter wing player. So it'll be interesting to see, what kind of effort Grimes can do to kind of hold that team in check. And Lowry, we know that he's been up and down dealing with that knee injury. Gabe Vincent's been starting a lot of games for him. But then of course Tyler Hero. He
was huge against Detroit. He had, I think, 10 points in the last 3 minutes of that game. The game was a lot closer than the final score was, but he had a big fourth quarter.
And even against the Knicks, the Randall buzzer beater game, he played well in the fourth quarter. So he's a guy that obviously those are the 2 guys you're gonna have to focus on. And then you got the all around immense talent of Bam Adebayo, who in the first game the Knicks played against Miami had one of his better games this season. So, this is a talented team, well-coached team. They'll be prepared and desperate. So Knicks gonna have to come out fighting.
Yeah, the Heat haven't gotten the results they would expect given how great Jimmy Butler has played in the month of March. But these are his numbers in the month of March. He's averaging 26 points, shooting 58% from the field, 40% from 3. He's also averaging 5 assists and almost 7 rebounds. He is playing at the high end of Jimmy Butler's potential. Like, this is final Jimmy Butler that the Heat have had essentially for the last a month or so, and he's only playing 33 minutes a night. And these minutes have been increasing steadily over the course of this stretch. So you come into this game, Bam Adebayo has been the guy that's really killed the Knicks in these games against the Heat this year. Jimmy Butler, I think, is a guy who may wake up and have a big one here. So they're playing at home. They desperately needed that game against the Pistons, and they got it. This is going to be a good one. I think that just like that, we knew that Friday night game was going to be a good game. I think that this game coming up on Wednesday, I think it's going to be a similar final possession kind of game between these two teams.
And it'll be interesting to see. You mentioned Bam. What center for the Knicks is on the floor in that final 5 minutes? Because he's gone with Hardenstein lately, and Mitch just doesn't seem. The comments. He's played decently, but he seems a little bit out of a groove. Obviously, the 3 bad games prior to the social media post hasn't played well. He hasn't played great in the 2 games since. Hardenstein has, continued to uphold his end of the bargain, but they're not, and he's done a good job defensively, but they're not the same team defensively when you have Hardenstein as opposed to Mitch Robin there. So I'll be interested to see if Robinson's on the floor at the end of the fourth quarter, if this is a close game.
Yeah, Mitch had a big steal, I think, in the last possession of that Heat game, if I remember correctly, because Randall hit the shot and they needed to get a stop. And unlike the New York game where Hero got a wide open 3, and you're like, oh my God, in the corner, Randall closed out pretty well to make it somewhat contested. Mitchell Robinson, they didn't get a shot from the last play. Mitchell Robinson was able to get a big steal. So you're right. How they finished with Mitch, who I agree. I really was disappointed in Mitch, honestly, on Monday night, because I really liked how he played against Denver. And guarding Jokic, I thought it was a good bounce back. And like now you got another premier match against another premier center, and he was just invisible. Like Gobert's killing him on the backboard. Gobert scored a bunch of points in that game. Like I don't know what Mitch was on, so that was a little unfortunate. So we'll see if Hardenstein ends up closing this game. They also then have that game against the Magic, and I tell you what, like I don't really look forward to games against the Magic. Like I know maybe other teams in the NBA do, or maybe fan bases do, but I just feel like every time the Magic play against the Knicks, they present problems. They're long, they're athletic. They're not necessarily the best offensive team, but they can guard you up and they can defend. I don't expect that game to be an easy game either. I know they just lost to the Lakers. Austin Reeves had a career high 35 points in that one, but the night before against the Clippers, they won. And they've won a lot of these games. They beat the Heat a couple of weeks before as well. So I do not sleep on their Orlando Magic, especially when they play against the Knicks. Typically, these are very competitive games as well.
Do not sleep on the Orlando Magic. And you mentioned casual NBA fans think, it's a win. They're a rebuilding team. No, like you watch those games, you watch the Magic play night to night. They play hard, they play well. They don't have the results. They haven't been able to finish. A lot of games they've blown 4-point leads, multiple possession leads late in games because they don't have a closer. They play 20-year-old kids. But you mentioned that Clippers game. The Lakers loss was the second night of a back-to-back in LA. That first night, the Saturday game in LA, Markelle Fultz, 28 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. He's playing the best basketball probably of his NBA career the last couple weeks. Wendell Carter went for 27 and 12 in that game. Franz Wagner, he's one of the most talented young 3-4s in the NBA. He had 20 and 4. They got Cole Anthony had 18, 8 and 6 off 18, 8 and 2 off the bench. They got dudes. They play hard. They play the right way. It's going to be the second night of a back-to-back for the Knicks, whereas the Magic, they have a night off. They play tonight, and then they don't play again until Thursday, so they'll have a rest advantage in that game. So yes, by no means, that is not a duck walk by any stretch of the imagination for the Knicks. They'll walk in prepared. And the other thing the Knicks have going for them as they make their way down to South Florida is lots of New Yorkers in the stands, as we've seen this season, and it'll only ramp up as the Knicks are playoff bound. There will be a lot of orange and blue in the building in Miami and Orlando.
Yeah, that last game at Amway Center in Orlando, I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, I know we've seen these games with Knicks on Florida and there are a lot of fans, but that was a Knicks crowd. They took over the Amway Center, and I get it. It's Orlando having a tough season. Maybe fans aren't getting out there as much. They're playing New Yorkers in Florida, so they made their way. But I mean, that was like an 80% Knicks crowd, which was just stunning to kind of see. As you see a game down the stretch, you hear defense chants in the Amway Center. You see Brunson get big buckets, and they're going crazy. And so, yes, that will help them a great deal. They will have a big presence, definitely in Miami. And again, I think that you'll have another really big presence in Orlando as well. So that always helps the Knicks when they head down south for these games. So should be fun, man. I wish I was down there. I know we got some decent weather coming to the Northeast now, so that's good. But I love when these teams make these little trips to certain regions, like they went to LA for a back-to-back, and then how to do the Orlando Miami trip. I think these are fun for a lot of the fans who live in those areas, or fans who want to take a vacation and go out to one of these towns. Have you ever done that, Tommy? Have you ever taken a trip out to any of these road trips Knicks have done where they've gone to LA or Florida to see some of these games?
I haven't. I do try to get out to my dad and I try to go to like the iconic venues. We've been to Wrigley Field, Fenway,
Yeah.
saw UNC Duke play at Krzyzewskiville, like all
Oh, that's nice.
Green Bay. I've been to Lambeau, went with my wife. So kind of the more iconic. If I'm going to plan a trip around a game,
Yeah.
so it was went to I'm a Lions fan. I've been to
Yeah.
Detroit, and then we flew out on a Saturday, went to see Michigan play at the Big House, and then went to the Lions game the next day.
Oh,
So,
nice.
trips like that, I see enough of a little bit jaded. I've seen a lot of NBA games, so the other arenas and stuff. If I'm going to plan a trip around a sporting event, I'll try to do one of those type of deals.
Gotcha. Yeah, I did a couple years ago. I think this was actually right before the pandemic. I did the LA trip. So Knicks had a back-to-back Clippers Lakers. That was a lot of fun. What's funny is the LA trip is nothing like the Florida trip where it's all Knicks fans. So the Clipper game is interesting because like you have a fan base that is very apathetic. So like it was a lot of Knicks fans, but also even though like there were also just a lot of people that just weren't like really any fan, they just came out because like Clippers were playing and Knicks were playing. So it was a very comfortable crowd. It was very fun. So I'm like, oh cool, I'll go to this Laker game. It'll be exactly the same. It was not the same. It was Laker fans all over the place. I'm like, yo, where the Knicks fans go? We got completely overshadowed. There were not many of us there. Very uncomfortable sitting there with my girlfriend, all these Laker fans. The guy is telling me how much they couldn't stand Julius Randle when he was a Laker. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not liking him either. This is Julius Randle's first year. And we lose the game, and I got these Laker fans there. Yeah, cuz throwing me the L sign, throwing up all crazy signs. I'm like, oh, okay, let's get out of here. This is a little weird. So it's those trips are fun. I like to take them. Different environment if you head out to LA for a Lakers Clippers game if you're a Knicks fan. Totally different vibes. But hopefully Knicks fans who head down to Florida for these two, know there'll be plenty of them going out there. They enjoy Heat, Knicks Wednesday, Magic, Knicks Thursday. Magic, Knicks Thursday. But let's